Hey there, this is Future Daniel. Why Future Daniel? Well, because I've just finished off recording the last video for this entire section, the Scikit Learn section. So you might see in an upcoming video, I saved to a list what we're covering section by section, an end-to-end workflow, getting the data ready, choosing the right estimator/machine learning algorithm for our problems, fitting the model algorithm to the data and using it to make predictions, and a few more steps. And what you'll probably quickly realize is that this is a pretty big section. So if I scroll through the entire notebook, all the code that we're going to cover, there is a lot here. Right through, keep following it through. Don't worry, this is across the next 25, 30 or so videos that you're going to go through. And here's that list that I created right at the start, right? I think this is in an upcoming video. And now, seeing this to start out with can be pretty intimidating. That's what I want to sort of warn you, right? Is that because there is so much, because we are going through a lot of different concepts of not only machine learning, but Scikit Learn as itself, I wanted to make an auxiliary resource that you can kind of come to and get a quick overview of what we're doing. So this list, although it tells you what's happening, it doesn't really tell you much other than just the headings of the different sections. So that's why there's resource that'll be available in the resources section. There'll be some sort of link in a place that you can find it, so don't worry. And this is what we're covering in the Scikit Learn introduction. So this is kind of like a table of contents for this massive notebook that we're going to go through. And don't worry, even once going through the entire Scikit Learn section, you're probably not going to know all this off by heart. And if it seems like I know all this off by heart and I'm going through it, I'm seeming like, wow, I could never do that, don't be mistaken. I've had a fair bit of practice with the Scikit Learn library, and that's why I'm able to go through and sort of figure out things and know where to look and go to the documentation and go, okay, I need this function to do that, this function to do that. So going through it for the first time, remind yourself, learning something new takes time, and learning anything worthwhile definitely takes time, especially machine learning. And so this is the framework that we're going to be using for the introduction. We saw this in the previous video, that keynote we went through. So step one, we're going to get the data ready. We're going to find out how to pick a Scikit Learn model. We're going to fit models to some data so we can make a prediction. We're going to evaluate our model, see if it's worthwhile even using the model that we've got. You'll see there's a couple of different ways to use this depending on the model we're using. We'll improve through experimentation because after all, machine learning is all about experimentation, and the quicker you can reduce your time between experiments, the more you're going to get done, the more insights you're going to figure out about your data, about your machine learning models. And then we're going to look at saving and reloading trained machine learning models. So you don't have to go through all these steps again. You can save a model, send it to a friend, send it to a colleague, put it in your application and use it. That was a bit of a mouthful in itself, but if you go through this resource, you'll see that I've got at the top standard library imports. Treat this as like the mini version of this. So this is the big behemoth that we're about to go through in this section, through all 30 or so videos. But this is like the mini overview you can quickly refer to, so you're not scrolling back and forth through all the stuff that's going in here. So to begin with, we've got some standard library imports. We're going to see how we can import data sets. To use examples in the Scikit Learn, we're going to focus on a classification and a regression problem using our heart disease and Boston data sets. Step one is getting the data ready, right? So each of these sections refers to a little step in this workflow. Get the data ready. You'll see the functions that we use there. You'll see section 2 is how we pick a model. So how we choose a machine learning model for what problem we're working on. This is one of the toughest things that you'll see in machine learning problems, but again, once we get familiar with this diagram, the Scikit Learn machine learning map, you'll start to see, oh, it's actually not as hard as you once might have thought. And then again, there's some code that you might use for choosing a model and instantiating one. Then there's some code here. You'll see the functions that we use to fit a model to training data, to make predictions. We can view our predictions / predicted probabilities. Predicted probabilities is done with predict prober. And if we come back down here, we'll see how we can evaluate our model. And there's a link here. You'll see in the documentation, there's a few different ways to evaluate different Scikit Learn models. This is a great section. I highly suggest reading through here because it's one thing to train a machine learning model. It's another thing to check if it's doing the right thing, what you want it to do. Once we've gone through evaluating a model, We'll see how we can improve our models through experimentation. What we're going to focus on is hyperparameter tuning, aka turning the settings on our model and improving it, just like if we wanted to adjust our oven, and while our oven was cooking our favorite meal, maybe it doesn't do so well on 180 degrees, but it does really well on 200 degrees. The same thing goes with machine learning models. Out of the box, it might work pretty well, but if you adjust the settings slightly, you might get a better model. So we'll see that in section 5. Then in section 6, we'll see how to save and reload our trained models so we can avoid going through the previous steps before if we wanted to save and share our model. And then in step 7, which is kind of a bonus, which is not pictured in the workflow, is we're going to put all of the above steps together in a single cell. So that looks like a lot of code at the moment, but don't worry, we're going to step through it. By the time you're at the end of this section, none of this will be unfamiliar. So with that being said, get yourself ready, get yourself excited, pour yourself a cup of coffee or go take a little walk or something. Get yourself in the mindset to learn machine learning, because that's what we're going to do. We're going to get into the Scikit-learn library and all of its magical goodness. So I'll see you in the next video.